We're back. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool with stream breaks when there's a bunch of people in here and I'm spitting about DD. Probably DDoS by Big Meat, I'm thinking. Almost definitely. Hey Carrie, welcome back. My computer's just I think we're going with the Big Meat DDoS. That seems the most likely. That seems most likely in my estimation. Alright, oh hey, nice, there's a few people back in here already. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, my computer's a piece of crap. I'm getting a new one pretty soon, I promise. Right, where were we? Goodness me. They got me, guys, they took me out. They can't keep me down. Right, challenges for livestock. Okay, so we were reading this, weren't we? Availability of livestock dry foods. Yeah. Okay, oh, here's the big meandering section where they don't really address the challenges. This is the whole section where they are meant to be acknowledging, yes, there are lots of difficulties and challenges and negatives with the livestock sector and lots of reasons to reduce livestock production and consumption. This is the challenges for livestock section, right? This is it. They're going to lay it all out. They're going to put their case for why we might want to moderate consumption or change systems, first of all. First sort of 25% of this paragraph is talking about how important meat and livestock foods are for wasting and stunting in the developing world. So not really challenges for livestock, that one. They're saying there's a challenge because there's just bloody not enough of it. With no evidence. At the same time, some methods and scale of animal production systems present challenges with regards to biodiversity, climate change and nutrient flows, as well as animal health and welfare within a broad One Health approach. Why would you make the sentence which is going to capture all of the downsides of the livestock systems so meandering, unclear? Something I've noticed here, and I'm certain this is deliberate, right? This is a very deliberately crafted piece of writing for rhetorical purposes, right? Something I noticed here. Some methods and scale of animal production systems present challenges with regards to biodiversity, climate change and nutrient flows, as well as animal health and welfare within a broad One Health approach. Like, this really is adding nothing. The only purpose of this part of the sentence is to avoid having animal welfare, full stop, end of sentence, because then it's going to be, at the end of a sentence, it's going to be very clear. It's going to be stay in the reader's mind once they finish it, right? So instead, we've got this meandering thing where we talk about climate change and nutrient flows, as well as animal health and welfare within a broad One Health. I mean, what is this adding, seriously? So this is the one bit where they've ostensibly mentioned the downsides of livestock production, and they really haven't given a proper acknowledgement here. Now, straight away back to, with strong population growth concentrated largely among socio-economically vulnerable and urban populations in the world, and where much of the populace depends on livestock for livelihood, supply and sustainability, challenges grow exponentially, and advancing evidence-based solutions becomes ever more urgent. So, again, this is the section of the Dublin Declaration where we're going to talk about some of the downsides for livestock production. We've got the first quarter talking about it's very important for nutrient deficiencies in the developing world. We've got the final, like, let's say the final quarter, right? The final third, really, it looks like, talking again about strong population growth, economically vulnerable populations, populations dependent on livestock for their livelihoods, right, supply and sustainability challenges. So really, the main thrust of this paragraph, challenges for livestock, is all about how we need to do more livestock farming. Hey AA, good to see you. Yeah, I think I have seen some evidence that vegans are more likely to have higher education levels, which is not that surprising in some ways, in my humble opinion. Yeah, we're actually going to play with some survey data later and do a little bit of a spreadsheet stream that I didn't do last night, so you can look forward to that. Maybe we'll do some education analyses in there. So that was challenges to livestock. This whole section was meant to be about acknowledging challenges for the sector, and more than half of it is basically talking about how we need more livestock. The one section where they mention the challenges that are the very important challenges that the livestock system today cannot overcome without serious reduction of production and consumption of livestock is this sort of half sentence buried and obfuscated and made into as difficult to access as possible so that they can say that they've addressed it. That's it, right? We ain't going to see any more criticism of livestock systems. We're not going to see any more implication that we need to reduce livestock production or consumption in the Dublin Declaration. That is it. This bit of sentence. Remember that, because in a minute we're going to watch Freddy Leroy saying that it's a very balanced declaration. Livestock and human health. Anyone know about livestock products and human health? Of course, the studies that we have on consumption of livestock products tend to support the view that a plant-based diet is going to reduce your risk of heart disease, cancer, obesity, diabetes, a bunch of chronic health conditions associated with overconsumption of animal products in particular. So I'm sure that their balanced article will address that in a balanced way, right? Livestock and human health. Livestock-derived foods provide a variety of essential nutrients and other health-promoting compounds, many of which are lacking in diets globally, even among those populations with higher incomes. Can anyone see what's wrong, what I'm going to say about this sentence? This is one of my favourite lines in the Dublin Declaration. You might have heard me talking about this line before. Hey Weaver, good to see you. Thanks for joining. Let's see if anyone can see what's wrong with this line. It's just catching up. Livestock-derived foods provide a variety of essential nutrients. Oh wow, that sounds pretty epic. Hey, we might have to watch that. What they're not saying here is that livestock-derived foods are essential for providing these nutrients. They're saying that they provide a variety of essential nutrients. Think about how meaningless that actually is, right? There are some essential nutrients in livestock foods, that is true. So therefore, livestock foods provide a variety of essential nutrients. Just like the gravel on my driveway provides a variety of essential nutrients. There's calcium in the gravel on my driveway. And iron and other essential nutrients. Of course, it's not essential to eat the gravel on my driveway. And it's not essential to eat livestock-derived foods. But this sentence is designed to give you the impression that it is. And we're going to see this is basically the theme of my critique of the Dublin Declaration. It is misleading. It implies a bunch of stuff which it doesn't actually say. And my favourite critique of the Dublin Declaration points this out. They then deny having claimed any of that stuff on their rebuttal section here. And the authors came back and did an empirical study which demonstrated that they were in fact implying that stuff. So this document is empirically demonstrated to be misleading. You really can't say that about many documents. Well-resourced individuals may be able to achieve adequate diets while heavily restricting meat, dairy, and eggs. This is trying to imply the rich vegans talking point, right? Well-resourced individuals may be able to achieve adequate diets while heavily restricting meat, dairy, and eggs. They could just say, it is easy, it is possible to get all of your nutritional needs from a 100% plant-based diet. As there's plenty of scientific evidence that they could cite for that point. And we did make that point, and we did cite plenty of scientific evidence for that point. But no, they have to say well-resourced individuals may be able to achieve it. It's almost impossible, right? You've basically got to be rich. However, this approach should not be recommended for general population. Oh, look at this big list of people that they include here, by the way. Paul Wood rattled this off. However, this approach should not be recommended for general populations, particularly not those with elevated needs, such as young children and adolescents, pregnant and lactating women, women of reproductive age, older adults, and the chronically ill. So if you're young or old or a woman... This is such rubbish. And again, no proper citations for this, right? We've just got this catch-all citation at the bottom of the document. So when somebody reads the Dublin Declaration and wants to challenge it, it's very difficult to find actual citations for the points that they're making. How much credence is the Dublin Declaration getting? Yeah, it's a good question. There's been a lot of published criticism already of the Dublin Declaration. From my perspective, I think it's dragged through the mud the reputation of everyone who's associated with it, because it's so clearly misleading. It's really an affront to the scientific process. And this person and anybody else who's associated with it has just marked themselves out as definitely untrustworthy on these issues. But unfortunately, it is written in such a way that it can pull the wool over the eyes of policymakers who are not particularly well informed on these opinions, or other stakeholders that they might want to try and persuade. I'm picking it apart here and showing you kind of what's wrong with it, but it would be easy to consume this if you're reading it quickly and it's one of the 100 things that you have to read that day. This is basically giving me the gist that livestock products are great and it's all well and fine and we don't need to do anything about it. Right, which is of course the point of the document. And they have been lobbying with it hard and using it as, you know, evidence for lobbying for no restrictions on livestock products and so on. So yeah, I think it's important to call this out, and it's going to be debated. Irina Herson is finally going to get the opportunity to debate Freddy Leroy on this topic, so we can look forward to that. The highest standards of bioevolutionary, anthropological, physiological, and epidemiological evidence underscore that the regular consumption of meat, dairy, and eggs as part of a well-balanced diet is advantageous for human beings. So there's a whole bunch of things going on here, right? First of all, they have this highest standards thing, which sounds good, but is enabling them to leave out evidence which they're calling not the highest standards evidence. Right, this was the crux of the global burden of diseases study that Paul Wood and I were debating. He said, well, there's not high quality evidence that red meat's associated with health risks, and therefore we can't really be sure, and therefore we shouldn't have restrictions. Right, but the quality of evidence for the health risks of red meat is as good as the quality of evidence for the health risks of secondhand smoking and chewing tobacco. So this is the highest standards. They're looking to leave out the epidemiological evidence which shows a negative health effect of consuming meat and animal products. And then we've got this long list of different topics where they're saying, oh, you know, we're terribly interdisciplinary. And I noticed that the first two here, bioevolutionary and anthropological, these kind of sound like they're going to be along the lines of we should be eating caveman diets, right? Anthropological evidence is not really that relevant to the question of whether regular consumption of meat, dairy, and eggs as part of a well-balanced diet is advantageous for human beings. He's going to show some evidence that there's anthropological evidence that humans ate meat, you know, a million years ago or whatever, but he's not going to... there's not evidence of anything, right? There's not evidence of anything relevant to meat consumption today. So again, this is just obfuscation, and they have to obfuscate, of course, because the reality is we're consuming unhealthily high amounts of meat and animal products in developed countries. We should be consuming far less meat and animal products in developed countries, and they have no scientific evidence on their side, and so all they can do is obfuscate and do these kind of vague, misleading statements with no citations that go nowhere. And by the way, will I find anything if I control F cancer or if I control F heart disease in this document? I think we know I won't. Do you think the authors genuinely believe this? Well, here's the thing. They have written it in a way such that there are no untrue sentences for the most part, right? I mean, well-resourced individuals may be able to achieve adequate diets with heavily restricted meat, dairy, and eggs, right? And the other thing that we had about, right, this is a sentence I flagged as misleading. Now, there's nothing wrong in here. It's just that they've deliberately made the sentence structure such that the only criticisms of livestock in the document are basically inaccessible. And every sentence is like this, right? Every sentence is crafted. Let me... There's a real good clip of Freddy Leroy that I want to show you at this point, because it really just sets the tone of what they're doing here. There's actually some pretty good wild content of Freddy on YouTube. We'll watch that sometime. Okay, this is the one I'm looking for. Right, listen to, this is the lead author, and this is the guy that's going to debate Irina Herson. Listen to how he talks about the Dublin Declaration here. Sorry, quality.
We recently designed or drafted a...
First sentence.
We recently designed or drafted a...
Designed or drafted. Corrects himself straight away. He's realizing, oh, I wasn't meant to say designed. I'll say drafted.
A manuscript that is called the Dublin Declaration, which is essentially a very short statement.
Even his facial expressions and body language. Look how shifty he looks when he's discussing it.
Designed or drafted a manuscript that is called...
Watch his eyes here.
The Dublin Declaration, which is essentially a very short...
looks away down from the interviewer.
Statement, but it is mostly an expression of concern coming...
Shifting around.
...out of academia to try and rebalance the conversation around livestock and livestock-derived foods. Because we feel that it's very one-sided, and a lot of scientists are getting concerned that the message goes beyond optimization and rationalization and improvement of the food chain towards radical scenarios.
So, radical scenarios, he's talking about eating a bit less meat. It's this guy's job to ensure that there's misleading science that obfuscates the need to reduce consumption of meat and animal products. And so meat reduction here is this radical solution, right? Actually, all we want is, what does he say, optimization?
Optimization and rationalization.
Optimization and rationalization.
An improvement of the food chain towards radical scenarios.
Yeah, it goes beyond improvement, right? Well, there can't be improvement now.
Which could have serious implications with respect to public health, how ecosystems function, and all sorts of other important matters.
Literally listing off the arguments for reducing livestock products that he has ignored in the Dublin Declaration.
So we brought in scientists from different expertises and disciplines.
This is a good bit as well, really, where he says where the scientists are coming from.
Which have mostly to do, of course, with livestock sciences and
It's just such a concession, right? It's like, okay, these are all just people from livestock departments in universities. These are all people who are working on livestock, invested in livestock in terms of their career, probably working with the farmers and livestock producers, right? These are all a bunch of livestock people, is what he's telling us there. But he wants to rush through it and get on to...
Which have mostly to do, of course, with livestock sciences and nutritional sciences.
Oh yeah, for sure. They don't know. They don't have a conscience, right? There's no feeling bad for lying here. I know he seems to feel a little bit awkward or uncomfortable sometimes. Maybe he's an awkward, uncomfortable guy, but he is shameless in lying about this for sure. And he's going to debate it. He's going to try and defend this against Irina Herson on the 9th of October.
To sign the declaration and as such give them a voice, which is not often heard, but which...
Man, this is such like woke coded like language as well, right? It's to give a voice to the unheard livestock farmers. It's so emotive. The whole thing reeks of that first paragraph where they're talking about livestock systems being too precious and being victims and everything else. It's so... Ugh, it's so emotive. Like, what is this? This is not science.
Which offers critical mass and is important to take into account when we will move forward with this debate.
Yeah, so again, he's talking about this in terms of like winning the political discussion.
And as such give them a voice, which is not often heard, but which offers critical mass and is important to take into account when we will move forward with this debate.
He's saying more than he meant to here, I'm sure. We need to reach critical mass. This is like some talking point that he's picked up from Beef Central or something, and he didn't realize that he wasn't meant to use that actual phrase when talking about it in a ostensibly scientific context. Man, this is one of my favorite videos on YouTube, this one. Let me skip to the good.
So what we're seeing is a lot of messages that come up.
Here we go. Look at this. 1 year on was the Dublin Declaration achieved. Oh no. Yeah, here we go. Response to recent media articles have claimed livestock scientists are biased. How do you respond to that? Let's see what he says here.
So typically if criticism against the Dublin Declaration or against similar initiatives or scientific communication comes out, typically it will boil down to discrediting the scientists by insinuating that their science is biased because of industry affiliations or industry funding.
That's the only criticism he seems to be able to understand. And if you look at the debate page here, you can register, by the way, or you can come and watch my live stream of it. If you look at what he said that he'll talk about, did I mention this here? National Home Creation. Okay, no, maybe he doesn't say this here. But this is the point that he always goes to, and that he will certainly be going to in this debate mainly. He just wants to cry about the fact that people are pointing out industry affiliations, and that actually doesn't necessarily mean that science is bad, and there's industry affiliations in other studies too. There's plenty of substantive criticism of the content of the Dublin Declaration, buddy. It's not just about the industry affiliations. I think you know that.
I want to stress that the Dublin Declaration is an independent initiative.
Where's that graph of all of the various conflicts of interest from the Dublin Declaration? Posted it on LinkedIn. Let's have a look. This is going to be my my Freddy stream. It's about time. It's about time. Where's the thing I'm looking for? Here it is. I posted this 5 months ago. Freddy Leroy, he's blocked me, right? So the link has gone from here. I tagged him at the time. Freddy Leroy says that the meat industry has no influence over the Dublin Declaration. He must not have seen this figure by Joachim Krattemacher, Roman Espinosa, Eldel Sanders, Richard Twine, and Bill Ripple. The details are a little complex, so I've translated it into a classic 4-panel meme for the modern scroller. You'll see the meme in a moment. To his credit, Frederick Leroy is indeed the only one of 6 co-authors of the Dublin Declaration who does not get paid directly by the livestock industries. The other 5 co-authors, Pierre Ederer, Rod Polkinghorne, Colette Castor, another one who's blocked me, Mohammed Kumari and Declan Troy, are all, as the kids say, getting that bag. Hoping people know about this at the FAO, World Health Organization, UNEP, European Parliamentary Research Service, European Commission. I knew these were the places that they were lobbying at the time. True, AA. True. What, this guy? So these are the various industry connections, right? Here's Freddy. And he's the only one lacking any red squares here, right? The coloured in red squares are paid commercial roles. But nonetheless, Freddy Leroy does serve on the Scientific Council of the World Farmers Organization. He's the president of the Belgian Association for Meat Science and Technology, and he's also the scientific board president for the Danone Institute Belgium. So yeah, I think he's quite involved with livestock. Now, none of these positions are paid, but he does sit on this scientific council with Pierre Ederer, who is the CEO and founder of the Global Food and Agribusiness Network, which is service provided to the animal industry. He also has a company called Gold Science, which seems to be just basically a ag misinfo purveyor. Then we've got this guy, Rod Polkinghorne, real name, founder of a company called Birkenwood, which is a service provider to the animal industry, and also a core member of the International Meat 3G Foundation. We've got this guy, Declan Troy, who is probably the one that I know least about, acting director of research at TGASC, which is Irish government agriculture body responsible for increasing exports of Irish animal products. It's a service provider and investor in the animal industry, it says here. And gets funding from the meat industry. Colette Castor, she's the CEO of the American Meat Science Association. She's the other one who's blocked me. Completely incapable of defending anything that's written in the Dublin Declaration, and actually seems to be the one who's most rattled by all of this. She offered to journalists, the lead authors here, when it was a little bit more vague before that, but Colette Castor's been, under the cosh and offered up that information. She's the CEO of the American Meat Science Association, so of course she is paid by the meat industry. Then we got this guy, Mohammed Kumari, Chief Executive Officer of Meat Division, IEH Laboratories and Consulting Group, service provider to the animal industry, right? So there's the completely independent venture of the Dublin Declaration. Nothing at all to do with the meat industry. And here's the full panel meme I translated into. Peter Eder and Roy Falkenhorn, Livestock Service Company founders. Mohammed Kamari and Colette Castor, meat industry CEOs. Declan Troy, Livestock Service Provider, Director of Research. Freddy Leroy, University Professor. You guys are getting paid? He's the only one of the six not getting that bag directly. No credit where it's due, but I'm sure he's going to get some cushy deals coming his way as a result of all of his obfuscation on behalf of the industry.
Coming from independent scientists, there has been no funding
So, let's hear that again.
by insinuating that their science is biased because of industry affiliations or industry funding. I want to stress that the Dublin Declaration is an independent initiative coming from independent scientists. There has been no funding whatsoever from industry or influence over what we're doing by industry.
Complete lies, right? Coming from independent scientists. Is he joking? Or is he just lying? How can you say that with a straight face?
And in the end, the only argument we ever hear is that...
The only argument we ever hear. Frederick Leroy has never heard another argument against the Dublin Declaration apart from industry associations meaning bias. Really? Really? Well, this was published a year ago. I've been tagging him on LinkedIn for 9 months, 22 days, 22 hours, 54 minutes, and 49 seconds. So it's possible that this time you haven't been aware of any of the other numerous published scientific criticisms of the Dublin Declaration. Totally possible.
That scientists that come with a pro-livestock message, that emphasize the benefits of livestock, that they, almost by definition, would be corrupted scientists.
That's the only argument they ever hear, guys. He's never heard another argument against the Dublin Declaration apart from they must be corrupted if they're coming from the livestock industry. And we do actually have some reason to think that that might be the case when it comes to Freddy Leroy in particular. Let's finish.
That's very problematic, and it's also very insulting.
Oh my goodness. It's very problematic and insulting. Is this...
That's very problematic, and it's also very insulting, as a matter of fact.
Come on, man. Oh my goodness. Tiniest violin, anyone? It's so upsetting and insulting that there would be any insinuation that these industry-affiliated authors have any kind of bias.
And unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Freddy won't accept it.
But we hardly ever hear scientific arguments.
Not ever or never?
We never
Never.
get scientific comments, specific scientific comments on...
Oh, you do. You do and you have, and you're going to get some more.
What is wrong in what we're saying. If you read the Dublin Declaration, and if you actually take the time to read through it, it's not a long document to begin with, and it's a very balanced declaration. It's a
Look at the eye contact when he says very balanced declaration.
It's not a long document to begin with, and it's a very balanced declaration. It's a declaration that argues that food systems need to change, that livestock systems need to change. But it also says that livestock systems are absolutely essential if you want to have sustainable...
Now, remember what I said before about they have that line in there so that he can now say, oh, it says that they need to change. Ready? Well, listen to this.
It's a very balanced that livestock systems, the declaration that argues that...
He's going to summarize what the Dublin Declaration's arguing. Right? Remember that document we've just been reading about how wonderful livestock products are for malnutrition in the developing world and the highest standards of bioevolutionary and anthropological evidence. Remember this? We're going to get a summary of Freddy's view of what this document is.
Food systems need to change, that livestock systems need to change.
Is that what it's saying? Is it pointing out that livestock systems need to change? Well, you know what? We do have that half a sentence. So yeah, maybe it's a really fair, balanced declaration.
But it also says that livestock systems are absolutely essential if you want to have sustainable
It does say that, yeah. It doesn't give any evidence for it. It does say that, though.
food system. And I don't see how that could be a controversial idea. And people...
Because you haven't given it any evidence. You've just asserted at the start of the Dublin Declaration that livestock systems are too precious and that they must continue to have the broad approval of society. If you don't give any evidence and just assert that at the very start of the document and then ask for scientific evidence for the benefits of livestock, then yes, that could be a controversial idea.
that say that it's a
This guy will never talk to me, by the way. For people coming in late, this guy has agreed to debate the Dublin Declaration, but he has not agreed to debate me. He's going to debate Irina Herson, who's very smart. She led one of the prominent criticisms of the Dublin Declaration. She's going to do a great job in that debate. But he will never ever talk to me.
problematic declaration. Well, they would have to...
Wait. This is one of my favourite bits.
Food system. And I don't see how that could be a controversial idea. And people that say that it's a problematic declaration, well, they would have to point out which exact sentence in that declaration is problematic, and then we can have a further discussion.
Oh boy. Well, let's get back to pointing out which exact sentences in the Dublin Declaration are problematic, and then maybe Freddy will want to have a further discussion with me. I kind of think that he won't, though. Well, we'll see. Actually, before I do that, there's one more Freddy interview I want to show. Euro Meat. What's the name of the thing? Yeah, here we go. It's this one. This is the oldest one, right? This is 7 years ago. I think this is 2018 that this is recorded. So this is before. Someone's slagging him off. And I've liked it. This is before the Dublin Declaration's written, right? This is several years before the Dublin Declaration's written. Let's see what Freddy was thinking about at this meat industry conference. In an interview with Euro Meat News.
Communication about meat is brought to the larger public. It is very often based on slogans, on distortions of I think one of the main issues nowadays is that when...
First of all, he's talking about his view of how information about meat is communicated with the public, right? So just to get an idea of where his mind was 2 or 3 years before he wrote the Dublin Declaration, this is what he thinks about communication communication with the public about the meat industry.
Communication about meat is brought to the larger public. It is very often based on slogans.
Tick for the Dublin Declaration.
On distortions of factual information.
Tick for the Dublin Declaration.
And it is not only misleading, it is also confusing, and even to the point that it becomes dangerous for public health.
Isn't that remarkable? He is literally describing the Dublin Declaration. Let's hear the 4 things again. He says 4 things. He's perfectly describing his own communications in the
Based on
industry.
slogans.
Based on slogans.
On distortions of factual information.
Distortions of factual information.
And it is not only misleading, it is also confusing, and even to the point that it becomes dangerous for public health.
5 things.
How do you think the meat industry should react to the scandals appear and to the media that is coming with a lot of fake news on the market regarding the food industry, especially on the meat industry?
There's some meat industry reporter as well asking the questions, bear in mind. Well, there's all this fake news about the meat industry.
Well, the meat industry as such.
Right, this is the one, okay? 2 or 3 years before the Dublin Declaration's written, this is what Freddy Leroy thinks about how the meat industry should respond to quote-unquote fake news about the downsides of meat consumption. Ready for this? How should the meat industry respond?
Such has a difficult time communicating because first of all it's a scattered industry. There are no specific budgets for PR, so they have difficulties in communicating.
First of all, that's not true. There's a whole bunch of unions which have budgets for PR and use them.
And secondly, they also they're kind of contaminated because they have financial interests. So
Okay, so he's aware of the conflict of interest thing, right? This is the main thing that he seems to talk about these days when talking about the Dublin Declaration. He's hyper aware of this conflict of interest point. So what is the solution then? How should the meat industry communicate with the public, Freddy?
it is not very obvious for the meat industry to communicate. Communication has to come from somewhere else, I believe. Communication has to come from academia.
Did you see that? Did you hear that? How should the meat industry communicate is the question.
Financial interests. So it is not very obvious for the meat industry to communicate. Communication has to come from somewhere else, I believe. Communication has to come from academia.
He's saying the quiet part out loud. Mate, you weren't meant to say that out loud. Fast forward a couple of years, and this guy's lead author of the Dublin Declaration. Do you think that he regards the Dublin Declaration as communication on behalf of the meat industry? Yeah, I think he probably does.
From people that do the research, that look at the facts, interpret the facts, and come to sound.
Look at his little hesitation.
Look
here.
at the facts, interpret the facts, and come to sound conclusions.
There's a little thing like, doesn't want to say, come to conclusions that the industry likes.
And bring those conclusions to the public in a way that is based on state-of-the-art science rather than on hasty and sloppy interpretations.
HD and sloppy interpretations.
Is the meat industry the
This is an unbelievable clip. This is him 2-3 years before the Dublin Declaration's written, saying this communication with the meat industry has to come from academia or from science. This guy's absolutely cooked. Right, back to the text. We've got 3 more sections to go. Livestock and the environment. Oh boy. Farmed and herded animals are irreplaceable for maintaining a circular flow of materials in agriculture by recycling in various ways the large amounts of inedible biomass that are generated as byproducts during the production of foods for the human diet. Again, they've got these big winding sentences. I really feel that the purpose of these is to obfuscate what's being said at the start. And again, here's the key part, right? This is the part that they wanted to say and wanted to put first in this paragraph. Farmed and herded animals are irreplaceable for maintaining a circular flow of materials in agriculture by recycling various ways of life. Right, so this is all a bunch of conditional and also still not correct. There is no need to have livestock, certainly on the scale that we have today, in a situation where almost all meat and almost all animals are coming from factory farms. And he's talking about livestock irreplaceable for maintaining a circular flow of materials, right? He's going to want to talk a lot about ruminants in particular, right? We'll get to that. Which, by the way, are no more than 26% of all of the meat consumed. This really has nothing to say about poultry and pork production. And again, it's just the sentence structure of this I'm really noticing in this read-through. They've got these big sentences with the parts that they want you to notice are so clear. And this is why the main criticism comes down to this paper is misleading, right? Livestock are optimally positioned to convert these materials back into the natural cycle and simultaneously produce high-quality food. I mean, again, this is kind of meaningless, right? Do we need to convert these materials back into the natural cycle? Optimally positioned to produce high-quality food? I mean, this is not scientific language. Ruminants in particular are also capable of valorizing marginal lands that are not suitable for direct food production. The issue with this talking point is that these lands don't have to be used for food production. I was at an event and someone's talking about grazing ruminants. And they said, well, you see, some ground, you can't actually grow crops for human consumptions. So if there wasn't any cows on that ground, there would be nothing. I looked around the event and I said, there isn't any cows on this ground. They've just used it for something else. These people have this view that it would have to either be cows or nothing occupying this ground. Furthermore, well-managed livestock systems applying agroecological principles can generate many other benefits, including carbon sequestration, improved soil health, biodiversity, watershed protection, and the provision of important ecosystem services. So again, we've got the long list when we want to say something good about livestock. Now, what you're not going to see here is any estimates of how many livestock are actually in this category. Well-managed livestock systems applying agroecological principles. So, how many livestock are we actually talking about in this category? Well, in our estimates, it's less than 2%. So they're really going to narrowly focus on this sliver of livestock where they can argue that there's some sort of benefit for livestock production. And they're basically going to ignore the vast majority of meat and animals which are in industrialized systems in developed countries. While the livestock sector faces several important challenges regarding natural resources utilization and climate change that require action, here's another not quite concession, right? You can tell already because it's starting with while the livestock sector faces several important challenges regarding natural resources utilization and climate change that require action. But what they're not saying is livestock is an unstoppable driver of climate change, that if we don't reduce the number of livestock, we're never going to meet our climate targets. They could have said that, but they chose not to word it that way. So while the livestock faces several challenges, one-size-fits-all agendas, such as drastic reductions of livestock numbers, could actually incur environmental problems on a large scale. Again, I'd love to see what citation Freddy is going to give for that point. And unfortunately, again, we don't have any proper citations in this document. We've just got this one catch-all citation at the end. Go and watch us doing some PowerPoint presentations. Brilliant. So again, you can notice the language used here, right? Why would it have to be one size fits all, a drastic agenda to reduce livestock numbers? They're deliberately using language that frames this as the crazy thing to do. Right, so this is all very crafted. This is why he says we drafted the document. That little Freudian slip is very revealing in my opinion. So again, here they're just focusing on like some tiny minority of livestock, and they're completely ignoring the vast majority of livestock which come from factory farms, and that is going to be the obfuscation that they're going to run with throughout. Livestock and socioeconomics. This is a great section. For millennia, livestock farming has provided humankind with food, clothing, power, manure, employment, and income, as well as assets, collateral, insurance, and social status. So again, we've got the big, long lists of things when we want to say that livestock are good. No implication that any of this is necessary today, right? We're talking about historically for millennia. Livestock-derived foods are the most readily available source of high-quality proteins and several essential nutrients for the global consumer. So, the global consumer, again, we're sort of hinting towards the developing world here. And livestock-derived foods are the most readily available source. So, can't quite bring yourself to say the cheapest to produce or the healthiest, but the most readily available. They're there. Are they the best? Well, they're the most readily available. Livestock ownership is also the most frequent form of private ownership of assets in the world, and forms the basis of rural community financial capital. Do you think that the people advocating for meat reduction are talking about villages where livestock ownership is the primary form of asset ownership? Or do you think they often explicitly say that they're not talking about those people, and that they're actually talking about people in developed countries consuming fewer animals from factory farms? So it's great that, you know, they've done some research and found out that it forms the basis of rural community financial capital. That's not what we're talking about. So this is all just obfuscation. In some communities, this is the best sentence, in some communities, livestock is one of the few assets that women can own, and it's an entry point towards gender equality. You want to take away assets from women, do you? You bastards. Don't you know that livestock's one of the few assets that women can own in some communities? Again, do you think those are the communities that we're talking about for reducing animal consumption? Or do you think we're talking about the communities that I live in and that you live in, developed countries where the vast majority of animal products are coming from factory farms? Again, great that you've done a little bit of woke research here, stuck that in, but completely irrelevant to the criticisms that are made of livestock overconsumption. Of course they know this, right? The reason, of course, that they're writing about the developing world here and not the developed world is that working in the livestock sector in any economy that has much more than a livestock sector is going to be one of the least rewarding, most poorly compensated, most associated with trauma jobs that you could get. So it's only really appealing to talk about it in the communities where it's an absolute economic necessity and women can't actually own other assets. So that's why we're not saying anything about the developed world here, but hopefully we can just keep the conversation on the developing world as much as possible, right? Advances in animal sciences and related technologies are currently improving livestock performance along all above-mentioned dimensions of health, environment, and socioeconomics faster than at any time in history. Again, this is kind of vacuous, meaningless to say, right? Pretty much advances in any sciences are accelerating things faster than any time in history. And this is not saying that they're going to get to any kind of stage where they will be within the planetary boundaries or healthy for humans to consume. I actually don't think it even is true that related technologies are improving the socioeconomics aspects, because they're going to tend towards centralization of ownership, tend towards factory farms, and that's exactly what we see happening. So I don't think that's even correct. At best, it's meaningless. At worst, it's incorrect. Final section then, outlook for livestock. Human civilization has been built on livestock from initiating the Bronze Age more than 5,000 years ago towards being the bedrock of food security for modern societies today. Livestock is the millennial-long proven method to create healthy nutrition and secure livelihoods, a wisdom deeply embedded in cultural values everywhere. Sustainable livestock will also provide solutions for the additional challenge of today, to stay within the safe operating zone of planet Earth's boundaries, the only Earth we have. Wow. Pause for applause, right? It's so poetic, it's so emotionally worded, it's so unscientific, it's so misleading, it's so awful. And I am so excited that Freddy Leroy has finally agreed to debate the Dublin Declaration, and we'll be having that debate with Irina Herson on the 9th of October. let me go ahead and play my Dublin Declaration criticism video. While I go and get my dog in. Hi, my name's Chris Bryant. I'm a scientist, before I paint my room, and I'm the lead author of this paper criticising the infamous Dublin Declaration. The Dublin Declaration is a misleading document written by meat industry executives and used by meat industry lobbyists to trick policymakers into thinking that there's no need for us to reduce our meat consumption in developed countries, despite an abundance of scientific evidence to the contrary. Essentially, the Dublin Declaration focuses almost entirely on livestock in the developing world and in agroecological systems. These are two categories which are far easier to defend, but which account for a tiny proportion of all livestock. Obviously, meat consumption in developed countries and meat production on factory farms account for almost all of the world's actual meat. On this article in the meat industry publication Beef Central, I commented, pointing out 3 papers which explain why the Dublin Declaration is misleading. Beef Central edited my comment to add, "in my opinion." I did not write that. Moreover, that's actually not just my opinion. There's now empirical evidence that the Dublin Declaration is misleading. And that's not something you can say for that many documents. Not only that, they added this note saying that there are glaring inaccuracies and mistruths in the reports that are linked, and promising to circle back for some closer scrutiny later. Well, later never came, here we are 4 months later, and now I thought I'd return the favour. Since you guys were so eager to weigh in on my comment to point out glaring inaccuracies and mistruths, I'm sure you won't mind if I do the same with this Beef Central interview with the lead Dublin Declaration author, Professor Leroy. Let's take a look how he handles this question about criticism of the Dublin Declaration.
So typically, if in the end, the only argument we ever hear is that scientists, and we never get scientific comments, specific scientific comments on what is wrong in what we're saying. If you read the Dublin Declaration, and if you actually take the time to read through it, it's not a long document to begin with, and it's a very balanced declaration. It's a declaration that argues that food systems need to change, that livestock systems need to change. But it also says that livestock systems are absolutely essential if you want to have a sustainable food system. And I don't see how that could be a controversial idea. And people that say that it's a problematic declaration, well, they would have to point out which exact sentence in that declaration is problematic, and then we can have a further discussion.
Yes, you heard that right. The lead author of the Dublin Declaration explicitly denies any influence from the meat industry, when every single one of the lead authors was entrenched in the industry. Now, it's true that conflicts of interest can exist and they don't automatically make your research findings invalid. But these guys failed to disclose their conflicts of interest, and were even explicitly denying conflicts of interest until they were discovered by investigative journalists. Professor Leroy is also very pleased to tell us that there has been no scientific critique of the Dublin Declaration. There has in fact been at least 5 published scientific critiques of the Dublin Declaration, although to be fair, many of these have come out since Professor Leroy gave this interview. Now, the Dublin Declaration people like to point to the rebuttals page on their website, where they have now responded to some of the criticisms that I showed, although they don't really tackle the central issues of those critiques. Moreover, when I searched for a response to my own critique, they have not provided one. Professor Leroy says that
people that say that it's a problematic declaration, well, they would have to point out which exact sentence in that declaration is problematic, and then we can have a further discussion.
since my critique of the Dublin Declaration came out, I've tagged Professor Leroy and the Dublin Declaration in several posts on LinkedIn. He even viewed my profile, so he has definitely seen my criticisms. I would love to have a scientific discussion with Professor Leroy about the Dublin Declaration and the role of livestock in society. Reach out to me and we can set it up. I'm sure lots of people would like to see that. For now, I think that this short video is enough to demonstrate to most people that the Dublin Declaration is misleading junk science. Anybody who claims that the Dublin Declaration gives any defence of the vast majority of meat and livestock products that are actually consumed in the real world has either been successfully misled or is being knowingly dishonest. Cheers. If you found this useful and you want to see more short videos debunking misinformation from the meat industry, you can follow me here at these links. It's my first ever video on this channel. Bit of a trip. But yeah, this is a pretty good summary still, I think, of why the Dublin Declaration is misleading junk science. And we've gone through it today, sentence by sentence. Even though Freddy says that if we can point out any misleading sentences, then we can have a full discussion. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. I don't think that's going to happen. Let's have a look at that rebuttals page. I want to check that they have still not said anything about mine. Yeah, alas. Not going to read all the response to criticisms here, but suffice to say, it's a lot of written gish gallop, a lot of misdirection, very little engaging with the actual critiques. Man, I'm stoked for the debate. Freddy, Leroy, Arena Herzog, October 9th. Like I said, this is my WrestleMania. Alright. Hey, here's a cool thing. This is the Vegan 2.0 app. You can find this at vegan2.org. Let me go ahead and sign in. And until recently, I was the top of this leaderboard for animals saved. But no more. I've been knocked off by Felix Werderman, a friend of the channel. We spoke to this guy about his substantial donations to animal organizations. And when I put them into the platform on Felix's behalf, I'm pleased to see that I've been knocked off the top spot. Silver medal for me now. 147,000 animals saved, but Felix Werderman, top of the league. 387,000. He's well on his way to 1 million, I think. What a guy. Let's see, we've got leaderboards for each category. Felix's top 4 donations. Someone called Athena is top for conversions. Nice work. Also top for sharing. Based Athena. Your boy, top for campaigns. Although I feel like, well, probably I have more recorded here actually. And pro bono work. The only people who's recorded something here. But pretty cool. This is the Vegan 2.0 app. You can check this out. Vegan2.org. Put it in the chat. And I think that might be the place to leave it. I've got my dog down here who's wanting some attention. But we went through the Dublin Declaration. We went through some Freddy Leroy clips. and we got the fantastic news that Frederick Leroy has finally agreed to debate the Dublin Declaration. That debate will be happening on October 9th with Irina Herson at 10 CET, so that's going to be 9 a.m. for me. I'll make time. And I'll stream it. It's not going to be my typical time of day, but I'm not going to miss it. That'll be good fun. That'll be good fun. All right, guys, thanks for joining. I appreciate you being here. I will likely stream again tomorrow.